Alright everyone, the version 6.2 beta 1 files are here, and that means we have our first absolutely massive info drop for what's coming next. We are kicking things off with the big one, the character everyone is going to be talking about, the full kit breakdown for the new 5-star Durin. We've finally got the details from his base stats and normal attacks all the way to his incredibly complex constellations, and I have to tell you, this is one of the most unique and dynamic-looking kits we have seen in a very long time. He's a character with 2 completely different forms, 2 different bursts, and a ton of potential for both team support and personal damage. So let's not waste any time. We're going to break down every single piece of this kit step by step to figure out exactly what this new Pyro character is all about. Looking for the best way to recharge in Genshin Impact? Lootbar.gg is the smarter choice. It works exactly like the in-game top-up, but it's way cheaper. New users get 5% off with the link in the pinned comment, and existing users get 3% off. Lootbar also has special deals on crystal packs, including the 6480 bundle, and even an all-in-one package with everything you need. See this? The regular $100 pack only costs $82 on Lootbar. The process is simple and secure. You don't need your password or login. Just enter your UID, pick your server, choose your pack, and your crystals are delivered in seconds. Players around the world trust Lootbar because it's fast, safe, and affordable. So don't waste your money, click the link in the description or pinned comment, and start saving on your top-ups today. Lootbar, safe, fast, and way more affordable. Let's start with the absolute basics. The information we have confirms Durin is a 5-star character who wields a one-handed sword. Looking at his level 90 base stats, he's sitting at 11,840 HP, a pretty high base attack of 330, and 783 defense. His Ascension stat is critical damage, which is listed at 22.8%. It's worth nothing that the text itself includes a note saying this might possibly be meant to be 38.4%, so that's a number we'll have to keep a very close eye on, as it could change. Now his normal attack is called Flamewing Cleave, and on the surface it looks fairly standard. It's a performance of up to 4 consecutive sword strikes, with the third hit being a double-hit combo. His charged attack consumes 20 stamina to unleash a forward slash, and he has a standard plunging attack for AoE damage on impact. But as you are about to see, these normal attacks are not what they seem. They are actually a core part of his entire transformation mechanic. This is where things get really interesting. Durin's elemental skill is called Dual Formula Fused Refinement. The description says it purifies the essence of soul and wish, initiating a refined transformation. During this state, both his elemental skill and his normal attack will temporarily change into special forms. Here's how it works. After you use this skill, Durin gains a special mode. From that point, if you press E, his skill button, he enters what's called Albedo Affirmation, which the text labels as the white mode. But if you press his normal attack button instead, he enters Negredo Negation, or the black mode. In each of these 2 distinct modes, he gains different buffs, and, most critically, he is able to use different elemental bursts. Let's look at what those 2 transformations actually do when you trigger them. The skill transformation, Albedo Affirmation, or White Mode, deals AoE Pyro damage around Durin. It ends the transformation process, and then it puts him into the Albedo Affirmation state for a full 30 seconds. The normal attack transformation, Negredo Negation or Black Mode, is different. This one deals 3 consecutive instances of Pyro damage to enemies directly in front of him, which also ends its transformation and puts him into the Negredo Negation state, again for 30 seconds. A really fantastic quality-of-life feature here is that when Durin enters either of these states, he restores a certain amount of elemental energy, which is listed as 33 energy. This effect can only happen once every 6 seconds, and the skill itself has a 12-second cooldown. So this entire system is about you, the player, making a choice. Do you want to be in white mode or black mode? Because that choice is going to directly dictate what your burst does next. And that brings us to the big payoff, the elemental burst, which is named Albedo Right, Flowing Radiance. This is what unleashes the power of the beast in different forms, and which form it takes depends entirely on the state Durin is currently in from his skill. The burst has a 70 energy cost, an 18-second cooldown, and a 20-second duration, which is some pretty great uptime. Now, if Durin is in the albedo affirmation, white state, when he uses his burst, it becomes albedo right, flowing radiance. This will deal 3 instances of AoE Pyro damage right away, and more importantly, it manifests the White Flame Dragon. This dragon then follows your active character around, periodically attacking nearby enemies with more AoE Pyro damage, and all of this damage is counted as elemental burst damage. However, if he's in the Negredo negation, black state, his burst transforms into Negredo right, smoldering star shade. This version also deals 3 instances of AoE Pyro damage on cast, but it manifests the Black Corrosion Dragon instead. This dragon also follows the active character, but its behavior is different. It periodically targets and attacks one nearby enemy with Pyro damage, which is also treated as burst damage. So, right away we can see a clear split. The white form seems to be for massive AoE and team play, while the black form is for focused, single-target damage. The kit also helpfully notes that if Durin is not in either transformation state when he uses his burst, it just defaults to the white form version. Now, let's look at the passive talents, because this is where those 2 forms get clearly defined roles. The first passive is called Light Spirit Manifest in Divine Order, and it gives you different buffs depending on which dragon you've manifested. If you have the White Flame Dragon out, the AoE one, when your nearby teammates trigger Burning, Overloaded, Pyro Swirl, or Pyro Crystallize, the affected enemy's Pyro resistance and their corresponding elements resistance are decreased by 20% for 6 seconds. That is a powerful team-wide resistance shred. But if you have the Black Corrosion Dragon out, the single target one, Durin's own Vaporize and Melt reaction damage is increased by a massive 40%. This clearly paints the picture. White form is a powerful support for reaction-based teams, while black form is designed to let Durin be a personal, big reaction damage dealer. His second passive, Chaos Formed Like the Night, is a more direct buff. While Durin is in either the albedo affirmation or Negredo negation states, his elemental burst damage is increased by 50% of his attack, which can go up to a maximum bonus of 1,000 flat damage. And finally, his utility passive is that completing 20-hour expedition assignments in Mondstadt will yield 25% more rewards. This is an incredibly complex and genuinely fascinating kit. The fact that he has 2 distinct playstyles, a support-focused one and a personal damage-focused one, built right into his skill is amazing. It really seems like you can build him as a dedicated Pyro support or as a main reaction-based damage carrier. It's a lot to take in, and I'm really curious to hear what your first impressions are. Which of these forms, the white mode or the black mode, sounds more interesting or more powerful to you? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments while we get into these constellations, because they take these concepts and push them even further. Starting with his C1, Reversal of Red Soil, it immediately increases his elemental burst damage by a flat 25%. But the main effect kicks in after using the burst, and just like everything else, it's different for each form. In white form, all nearby teammates gain 12 stacks of an effect called Cycle Enlightenment for 20 seconds. When any of those teammates deals any kind of damage, normal, charged, plunging, skill, or burst 1 stack is consumed, and that single instance of damage is increased by 60% of Durin's attack. The text also clarifies that each teammate's stacks are counted separately, which is just a huge damage buff for your entire team. Now, in black form, Durin himself gains 12 stacks for 20 seconds. When his burst damage hits an enemy, 2 stacks are consumed, but it increases that hit's damage by 100% of Durin's attack. This C1 is a massive buff to both of his playstyles, and using the burst again simply refreshes the stacks. His C2, Thoughts Without Bottom, is another enormous team buff. For 20 seconds after he uses his burst, when any of his teammates trigger Vaporize, Melt, Burning, Overloaded, Pyro Swirl, or Pyro Crystallize, all nearby teammates will gain a 50% Pyro damage bonus and a 50% corresponding elemental damage bonus for 6 seconds. This is just a gigantic elemental buff for pretty much any reaction team you can think of. His C3 is Mirror of Flame Manifested, which is the standard level increase for his elemental burst, and his C5, Crack of Bitter Flame, is the level increase for his elemental skill. Then we get to his C4, Overflowing Origin. This one is a simple but very powerful upgrade for his C1. When that Cycle Enlightenment buff from C1 would be consumed, there is a 55% chance that the stack just isn't consumed at all, which makes that very powerful buff last significantly longer. And finally, we have the C6, Dual Birth. This is, as you'd expect, a massive damage spike. First, Durin's elemental burst damage innately ignores 30% of the enemy's defense right off the bat. But it gets even further enhancements based on his form. In white form, when the White Flame Dragon or the burst itself hits an enemy, that enemy's defense is reduced by 30% for 6 seconds. This is a powerful defense shred for your entire team to take advantage of. In black form, however, it's all about his personal damage. When the Black Corrosion Dragon or the burst deals damage, it ignores an additional 40% of the enemy's defense. That is a staggering amount of defense ignore, stacked right on top of the initial 30%. This C6 really pushes his two forms to their absolute limits. The white form becomes an ultimate team debuffer, and the black form becomes a personal damage powerhouse that just shreds through enemies. So, that is the complete kit for Durin based on all the information we have from this initial 6.2 beta. This is genuinely one of the most interesting and mechanically deep characters we have seen. He's a 5-star Pyro sword user who can be an AoE support, a resistance shredder, and a reaction buffer, or he can be a single target, self-buffing, defense-ignoring, melt and vaporize-focused damage dealer, all just by changing from his E transformation to his normal attack transformation. It's clear that he's designed to be incredibly versatile. Of course, this is just the first beta, and these numbers, especially that crit damage substat, are all subject to change. But Durin isn't the only new character we have information on. We also have the full kit details for Jahoda, who is the new 4-star character for this patch. Since she's a 4-star, we'll go through her kit a bit more quickly, but she's actually looking like a very interesting and complex support. The leaks show she's an Animo Bow user, and her Ascension stat is Healing Bonus, which immediately tells us her primary role is going to be a healer. Her normal attack is a standard 3-shot bow combo, with her fully charged shots dealing Anemo damage. Where she gets unique is her elemental burst called Secret Tool, the Hunter's 7 Gadgets. This is where her main support capability comes from. She summons 2 cat-shaped coordinators, which deal Anemo damage on cast and then continuously heal your active character. This healing scales with her attack. And if the character being healed is already above 70% HP, the coordinators will also restore HP to the party member with the lowest health, which is a really nice bit of extra utility. But the most important part is that these coordinators can also convert their element. If there are nearby opponents affected by Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo, the coordinators will convert to that element and start periodically attacking up to 3 nearby enemies, dealing damage of that corresponding element. So, she's an Anemo healer who can also provide off-field elemental application and damage. Her elemental skill is called Tactical Scheme, Wealth Redistribution. It's a swift dash towards enemies. If she gets near an enemy that's affected by Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo, she enters a shadow pursuit state and starts to secretly convert her Whirloo Stash flask to that element, loading it up. When the skill ends or is recast, she empties the flask for Anemo damage. However, if the flask gets fully loaded, she'll instead start firing fluffy cat balls of the element she absorbed, and hitting enemies with these regenerates her energy. If her initial dash doesn't hit an enemy, she just drops a smoke bomb that deals AoE Anemo damage. Her passives really tie this all together. One of them, Clever Compensation, gives her bursts coordinators a special bonus based on your party composition. If you have more Pyro characters, the coordinators do more damage. If you have more Hydro, they heal for more. If you have more Electro, you get an additional coordinator, and with more Cryo, they attack faster. This is a really cool way to make her flexible for different teams. Her other passives increase her team's moon sign level and give the active character 100 elemental mastery if they get healed while already above 70% HP. Her constellations seem to make all of this better, with her C1 letting her fluffy cat balls bounce to other enemies, her C2 letting her passive get 2 elemental bonuses at once, and her C6 giving a nice crit rate and crit damage buff to all Nod Cry characters in the party after her skill's flask becomes full. So, while Durin is clearly the big 5-star damage dealer of the patch, and Jahoda is shaping up to be an incredibly versatile Anemo support, what we have to talk about next might honestly be the most exciting and unexpected news from this entire 6.2 beta. We are seeing significant buffs and enhancements coming for some of the oldest characters in the game, characters who have been staples since version 1.0 but have, for many, fallen out of the meta. I'm talking about Venti, Klee, and Mona. This is a massive deal, and it could completely change how these characters are played. Let's start with Venti because these changes are fascinating. The buffs are focused on his Elemental Burst, Wind's Grand Ode. While the Storm Eye from his burst is active, Venti is getting new additional effects. His normal attacks will be converted into Hurricane Arrows, which pierce through enemies and deal increased Anemo damage along their path. But that's not all. When one of Venti's normal attacks hits an enemy, it will now extend the duration of his burst's Storm Eye by 1 second, and in exchange it will increase its cooldown by 0.5 seconds. This effect can trigger as fast as every 0.1 seconds, but it's capped at 2 times per use of his burst. This is a huge new mechanic, allowing him to actively keep his burst on the field for longer. And this new Hurricane Arrow mechanic feeds directly into his constellations. His C1, Splitting Gales, still fires 2 additional splitting arrows on his aimed shot, but it now has a major addition. His new Hurricane Arrows will also fire 2 extra homing arrows, each dealing 20% of the original damage. This can occur once every 0.25 seconds, and if his burst has an elemental absorption, these extra homing arrows will also deal that absorbed elemental damage. Then we get to his C6, Storm of Defiance. It still has that 20% Anemo RES shred for enemies inside the burst, which is already great. But now, it has an additional effect. Venti himself gains a plus 100% critical damage bonus against those enemies. This is a complete game changer. It shifts Venti's C6 from just being a support constellation to being a massive personal damage steroid, encouraging you to keep him on field firing those new hurricane arrows into his own burst. Next up is Klee, and her buffs are aimed at fixing her stamina issues and smoothing out her gameplay, making her even more explosive. It starts with her Pounding Surprise passive. Now, when Jumpty Dumpty or her normal attacks deal damage, there's a 50% chance to grant Klee 1 explosive spark. But additionally, just using her elemental skill or elemental burst will grant her an extra explosive spark. She can now hold up to 3 of these at a time. And just as before, performing a charged attack will consume 1 spark, making that charged attack cost no stamina and increasing its damage by 50%. This is already a huge improvement, giving her more reliable access to her free buffed charged attacks. But the Arcane Art Secret Rite changes are where it gets crazy. During her elemental burst, her normal attack combo count will not reset, which is a massive quality of life buff. When she uses her 3rd normal attack, she can consume 1 explosive spark to summon a coordinated charged attack, Bombardment. But there are even more additional effects. When she consumes an explosive spark, there's a 50% chance not to consume it. And when she uses her 1st or 2nd normal attack, there's a 40% chance to consume a spark to summon another coordinated charged attack. This means during her burst, she could be absolutely spamming these bombardment attacks non-stop. Her constellations are getting buffed too. Her C1, Chained Explosions, now has an additional effect. After triggering a spark bombardment, Klee's own attack is increased by 60% for 12 seconds. And her C6, Blazing Artillery, is becoming a huge team buff. While her burst is active, she still regenerates 3 elemental energy every 3 seconds for all party members except herself. But additionally, for 25 seconds after casting her burst, all party members gain a 10% Pyro damage bonus, and Klee herself gains a massive 50% Pyro damage bonus. This just makes her an absolute monster, buffing both herself and her team. Finally, we have Mona, and her enhancements are all about boosting her constellations to make her an even more powerful buffer. Her C1, the Sunken Prophecy, still enhances water-related reactions for 8 seconds after you attack an enemy in her Astral Anomaly Omen state. But it now has a ridiculously strong new piece of text. If your team's characters are in the background, meaning they are off-field, the damage bonus they get from these water-related reactions is increased to 160%. This is a staggering buff for any off-field Hydro, Electro, or Pyro damage dealer on her team. Her C2, the Alignment of Stars and the Moon, always had that 20% chance for a normal attack to automatically fire a heavy or charged attack. Now it has a new buff. Within 5 seconds of her casting her Elemental Burst, her first normal attack is guaranteed to automatically perform that heavy attack. And on top of that, just hitting an enemy with a heavy attack will now grant 80 Elemental Mastery to all nearby characters for 12 seconds, turning her into an EM buffer as well. And her C4, Prophecy of Extinction, which always gave a 15% crit rate buff against enemies in the Omen, is also getting an addition. Now, when all magic characters, which we assume means Catalyst users, attack enemies in that astral state, their critical hit damage is also increased by 15%. These are not just small number tweaks. These are significant mechanical changes that could bring these launch day characters right back into the spotlight. It's a massive shift, and it honestly makes you wonder which classic character you think deserves a buff the most. Let me know your pick down in the comments because this opens the door for so many possibilities. This is genuinely one of the most exciting developments we've seen in a long time. But these buffs aren't all we know about 6.2. We also have information on new weapons and, well, a new map expansion. And honestly, we should probably get the bad news out of the way first, because this one is a bit of a letdown. We have an image of what appears to be the only new map being added in this version, and it's tiny. It is not a new exploration area. It is not a big expansion of Nod Cry. It's a small, circular, self-contained room that looks almost exactly like a boss arena. This is almost certainly just the location for a new boss fight, perhaps where we get the new materials for Durin or Jahoda, and not a place we're going to be spending any real time exploring. So if you were holding out hope for a big new region to run around in for 6.2, it looks like you're going to have to temper those expectations. It seems this update is going to be far more focused on the characters, events, and these new buffs. But now, let's get to the good news, because we have some incredible new weapons coming that more than make up for the lack of a map. We have info on 2 new 5-stars and a new 4-star, and one of them in particular seems like it was custom-made for the new Venti buffs. Let's start with that one, the new 5-star bow called the Dawn of Distant Hymn. This thing is an absolute stat monster. It's rocking a massive 674 base attack and a 44.1% crit damage substat. Its passive is really complex but incredibly powerful. First, the wielder gets a buff called Rising Dawn Wind after being out of combat for 3 seconds, which increases their normal attack, skill, and elemental burst damage by a huge 60% at Refinement 1. But once you're in combat, this big buff starts to decrease, dropping by 10% every second until it reaches 0, so it's a huge Alpha Strike buff. But that's not all. When the wielder's normal attack, skill, or burst hits an opponent, it starts building a different kind of damage bonus, which stacks up to a maximum of 60% for that specific attack type. And here's the critical part. This effect can still trigger even when the wielder is off-field. This is exactly what makes it seem so perfect for that new Venti. You can get the massive burst damage buff, and when Venti's on-field firing his new Hurricane Arrows, which are his normal attacks, he'll also be stacking up a huge normal attack damage bonus. It's the perfect DPS bow for this new playstyle. Next up, we have the new 5-star sword, Black Erosion. This one has a solid 608 base attack and a 33.1% crit rate substat. Its passive is also very strong, starting with a flat 16% increase to elemental burst damage. Then, after the elemental burst hits an opponent, it grants a buff called Daylight Blade for 3 seconds. This is a dual buff. It increases the wielder's own attack by 16%, and it also increases the attack of the on-field character, if it's someone else, by 12%. This makes it a fantastic weapon for a burst-focused sub-DPS or support, since it buffs both themselves and their main carry. Both of these 5-star weapons also mention a special Arcane Rite effect, which, if active, makes their passives even stronger, and in the case of the sword, allows it to be triggered even from off-field. And finally, we even have a new 4-star bow, Rainstring of the Rainbow Serpent. This one has a 5/10 base attack and a very nice 45.9% energy recharge substat. Its passive is simple and just fantastic. When the wielder's attack hits an opponent, the wielder's attack is increased by 28% at Refinement 1 for 8 seconds, and this works even if the wielder is off-field. This is a phenomenal 4-star option for any off-field sub-DPS bow user. So, while the map news is disappointing, these new weapons are looking incredible, and they aren't the last of the new content we have details on. We have to talk about the final pieces of the 6.2 puzzle, which are the new bosses and content updates. First, to go along with that small circular arena map we saw, we have confirmation of a new world boss, and as many suspected, it appears to be some kind of robot. This is almost certainly what we'll be farming in that new arena, likely for the ascension materials for either Durin or Jahoda. For all the TCG players out there, you'll be happy to know that a batch of new cards will also be added in this version, so you can start theory crafting some new decks. But the other big boss news is about a new weekly boss. It looks like Ririr is going to be our next Trounce domain opponent. The information we have shows that Ririr currently has the ID 14, and this will actually make Ririr the 14th weekly boss to be added to the game. This means more new talent materials to farm, and likely a big new story quest associated with unlocking this fight. And that is pretty much everything we know about version 6.2 from this massive beta leak. It is an absolutely packed update, even without a major map expansion. We have Durin, a brand new 5-star who looks like one of the most mechanically complex and versatile characters we've ever seen, with 2 completely separate forms for support and personal damage. We have Jahoda, an incredibly intricate 4-star Anemo healer who also provides off-field elemental application. And in what might be the biggest news of all, we have massive, game-changing buffs to classic characters like Venti, Klee, and Mona, potentially bringing them right back into the meta with new playstyles. Add in a new robot world boss, a new weekly boss in Ririr, and a whole suite of powerful new weapons, and 6.2 is shaping up to be a version that will fundamentally shake up the game. This is, without a doubt, one of the most exciting sets of leaks we've had in a long time. So what part of 6.2 are you most hyped for? Is it the insane potential of Durin? Are you excited to see a 4-star as interesting as Jahoda? Or are you just ready to dust off your Venti, Klee, or Mona and try out their powerful new buffs? Let me know everything you're thinking down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this massive breakdown and you want to stay up to date on every single piece of Genshin news and future patch details, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.